In the world of cars, some machines earn reputations that go far beyond horsepower numbers or top speed bragging rights. They become legends, sometimes feared, sometimes respected, and often remembered for all the wrong reasons. Among enthusiasts, one chilling nickname stands out: the Widowmaker. These are the cars that combined extreme performance with unpredictable handling, poor safety standards, or simply unforgiving engineering. They weren't just fast, they were dangerous, demanding absolute respect from anyone who dared to drive them. One small mistake behind the wheel could mean disaster, and many of these cars left a trail of accidents, injuries, and even fatalities that cemented their reputation. Today, we're counting down 12 of the most infamous Widowmakers ever built. Cars that earned their deadly nickname through power, design flaws, or sheer recklessness on the road. Buckle up, because this ride is about to get dangerously interesting. Number 12. Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Gullwing. The Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Gullwing is widely celebrated as one of the most beautiful and influential sports cars ever built. Launched in 1954, it stunned the world with its futuristic gullwing doors, advanced engineering, and top speed of over 160 miles per hour, which made it the fastest production car of its era. It wasn't just a luxury toy, it was a technological marvel, boasting fuel injection at a time when most cars still relied on carburetors. But underneath its elegant surface was a dark and dangerous side that earned it the Widowmaker label. The most notorious issue with the 300 SL came from its swing-axle rear suspension. Unlike modern independent suspension systems, this crude setup caused the rear wheels to tuck in sharply during hard cornering. The result was sudden and violent oversteer, often catching even experienced drivers completely off guard. Many owners described the car as unpredictable, and more than a few high-speed crashes were attributed to this dangerous handling quirk. Another danger lay in its design itself. The iconic gullwing doors, while stunning to look at, posed a deadly problem in the event of a rollover accident. Because the doors hinged upward and required ample clearance to open, many drivers found themselves trapped inside wrecked vehicles. Several fatal accidents occurred where occupants couldn't escape the twisted metal in time. This tragic flaw gave the 300 SL's beauty a grim edge. Despite these dangers, the 300 SL remained incredibly desirable, with celebrities and wealthy enthusiasts eager to own one. Its combination of racing pedigree, it was derived from the W194 race car, and stunning looks made it irresistible. But the stories of drivers losing control or failing to escape after a crash followed it throughout its production run. Today, collectors pay millions to own a 300 SL Gullwing, but few forget the darker side of this icon. While it stands as a symbol of German engineering and 1950s glamour, it also stands as a warning of an era when speed and innovation often came at the expense of safety. The Gullwing didn't just make history, it earned a reputation as one of the earliest and most elegant Widowmakers in the automotive world. Number 11. De Tomaso Pantera. The De Tomaso Pantera was supposed to be the dream car for drivers who wanted Italian styling paired with American muscle. Introduced in the early 1970s, it carried exotic looks designed by Ghia, a mid-mounted 5.8-liter Ford V8 with around 330 horsepower, and the promise of Ferrari-like thrills at a more accessible price. On paper, it seemed like the perfect formula: a blend of beauty and brute force. But in reality, the Pantera developed a reputation as one of the most treacherous cars ever to wear the Widowmaker label. The first major issue was quality control. Unlike Ferrari or Porsche, the Tomaso lacked the resources and precision of established European manufacturers. Early Panteras were riddled with problems: misaligned body panels, unreliable electronics, poor rust protection, and even doors that sometimes refused to open or shut properly. This lack of refinement might have been forgivable if the car's driving dynamics made up for it, but that was where the real danger lurked. The Pantera's mid-engine layout should have been a recipe for balanced handling, but poor engineering and uneven weight distribution made the car unpredictable at best. At high speeds, it was notorious for sudden snap oversteer, meaning the rear end could break loose without warning. Combined with the heavy steering and lack of modern safety systems like traction or stability control, inexperienced drivers often found themselves completely overwhelmed. The brakes also added to the danger. Despite the car's ability to push past 150 miles per hour, its braking system was underpowered and prone to fading, especially during spirited driving. Many Pantera owners told stories of terrifying moments where the car simply wouldn't slow down as expected. There are countless anecdotes about the Pantera's deadly personality. One infamous story comes from Elvis Presley himself. After his Pantera refused to start one morning, the king of rock and roll grew so frustrated that he pulled out a revolver and shot the car several times. For many, this bizarre incident summed up the Pantera's reputation perfectly. It was gorgeous to look at, but dangerously unreliable and unpredictable when it mattered most. Today, the Pantera has become a cult classic, loved by collectors for its bold styling and raw V8 power. But its history is soaked in stories of near misses and fatal crashes, solidifying its place on the list of true automotive widowmakers. Number 10. Pontiac Firebird Trans Am. The Pontiac Firebird Trans Am became an American icon of the 1970s and 1980s. Thanks to its starring role in movies like Smokey and the Bandit, it earned a reputation as the ultimate symbol of freedom, rebellion, and raw muscle car performance. With its aggressive styling, screaming chicken hood decal, and powerful V8 engines, the Trans Am was the dream car for many young drivers of its era. But behind the Hollywood glamour and muscle car image, the Trans Am carried a dangerous reputation that earned it the Widowmaker nickname. The problem wasn't just with the car itself, it was with the combination of power and poor handling. The Trans Am was built during a time when American manufacturers prioritized straight-line speed over cornering ability. Equipped with big block V8s capable of producing serious horsepower, the car could rocket down highways with ease. But once the road began to twist, its flaws were exposed. The heavy front end, soft suspension, and primitive brakes meant the Firebird struggled to stay composed at high speeds. Drivers who pushed the car into corners often discovered understeer, snap oversteer, or brake fade, all of which could end in disaster. Another issue was its popularity with young, thrill-seeking drivers. The Trans Am was marketed as a rebel's car, appealing to adrenaline junkies who wanted to show off. Unfortunately, many inexperienced drivers jumped behind the wheel of these powerful machines without understanding their limits. The result was a wave of accidents that built the Trans Am's deadly reputation. Law enforcement officers in the 1970s and 80s often referred to them as trouble magnets, because they were so frequently involved in high-speed crashes. The Trans Am's chassis was also far from sophisticated. Compared to European sports cars of the same era, like Porsche or BMW, the Firebird was a blunt instrument. Its live rear axle, poor weight balance, and low-quality tires made it unpredictable at speed. Even skilled drivers had to wrestle with the car to keep it under control, especially on wet or uneven roads. Despite all of these dangers, the Firebird Trans Am remains a beloved classic. Its cultural status, tied to movies, music, and the muscle car craze, overshadows its darker legacy. But for every fan who admired its looks and sound, there are cautionary tales of drivers who underestimated it and paid the price. That's why it belongs on the list of true widowmakers. Number 9. Ford Mustang, 1960s to 70s muscle era. Few cars symbolize American automotive culture like the Ford Mustang. When it debuted in 1964, it created the pony car segment and quickly became one of the best-selling cars of all time. Affordable, stylish, and endlessly customizable, the Mustang was a dream come true for car enthusiasts across the United States. But as the muscle car wars of the late 1960s and early 1970s heated up, the Mustang became something else entirely. A dangerously powerful machine that could be as deadly as it was thrilling. The early muscle-era Mustangs were loaded with massive V8 engines, such as the legendary 428 Cobra jet and the Boss 429. These engines pumped out enormous amounts of power, far more than the average driver of the time could handle. Unfortunately, the chassis and suspension technology hadn't caught up with the performance under the hood. The Mustang's solid rear axle, soft suspension, and inadequate brakes meant that while it could accelerate like a rocket, it struggled to stop or corner with precision. One of the biggest issues was weight distribution. With heavy V8s mounted up front and a relatively light rear end, the car was prone to losing traction under hard acceleration. Combine that with primitive tires from the era, and Mustangs had a reputation for spinning out of control. Stories of young drivers losing their lives in high-speed crashes became all too common, and insurance companies began to treat the Mustang and muscle cars in general as high-risk vehicles. Adding to the danger was the fact that these cars were often sold to young drivers who were inexperienced with high-performance machines. The Mustang's affordable price tag put big horsepower within reach of teenagers and college students, many of whom underestimated the car's raw power. Street racing became a nationwide trend, and the Mustang was at the center of it. Unfortunately, this culture of speed often led to tragic outcomes. Even decades later, the Mustang's reputation for being difficult to handle persisted. Modern drivers jokingly refer to Mustang crowd control videos, where owners lose control, leaving car meets and crash into spectators. While today's models are equipped with advanced stability systems, the legacy of the early muscle Mustangs as unpredictable, dangerous machines remains. For all its cultural importance, the Mustang of the 1960s and 70s was more than just a symbol of freedom. It was also a car that could easily turn deadly, earning its place among the feared widow makers. Number 8. TVR Cerbera. When it comes to raw, untamed sports cars, few brands embody danger quite like TVR. The British automaker was famous for rejecting modern safety features, prioritizing performance and excitement above all else. Out of all the models it produced, the TVR Cerbera stands out as one of the most infamous widowmakers of the 1990s and early 2000s. It was fast, beautiful, and thrilling, but also terrifyingly unforgiving. The Cerbera was launched in 1996 as a four-seat coupe that promised supercar-level performance at a fraction of the cost. Under its sleek, hand-built body, it packed TVR's own AJP-8 engine, a 4.2 or 4.5-liter V8 that delivered upwards of 420 horsepower. With a lightweight fiberglass body weighing under 1,200 kilograms, the Cerbera could accelerate from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just over 4 seconds and reach a top speed of nearly 200 miles per hour. On paper, it was a monster that could rival Ferrari and Porsche. But what made the Cerbera truly dangerous was TVR's philosophy of pure driving. The company refused to equip its cars with modern driver aids like traction control, stability control, or even airbags. Peter Wheeler, the company's outspoken boss, once said that if a driver needed electronic assists to control the car, they shouldn't be driving a TVR in the first place. That might have sounded romantic to enthusiasts, but in practice, it meant the Cerbera could easily overwhelm drivers. The car's chassis was brutally stiff, and its suspension was tuned for racing rather than everyday use. On smooth tracks, it was a thrilling machine, but on public roads, especially in wet or uneven conditions, it became extremely unpredictable. One wrong throttle input or steering correction at high speed could send the car spinning out of control. Many Cerbera owners described it as exhilarating when driven at the limit, but utterly terrifying if you made even the smallest mistake. Its lack of crash protection made things even worse. With no airbags, limited crumple zones, and minimal driver safety features, accidents in the Cerbera often ended badly. Stories circulated of owners losing control during spirited drives and suffering severe consequences. British tabloids frequently labeled TVRs as death traps, and the Cerbera was at the center of that reputation. Today, the TVR Cerbera is remembered as a cult classic. Collectors admire it for its rawness and unfiltered driving experience, but it remains a car that demanded total respect. In the wrong hands, it was more than just challenging. It was deadly, a true modern-era widow-maker. Number 7. Shelby Cobra 427. The Shelby Cobra 427 is one of the most legendary American sports cars ever built, but it also ranks among the most dangerous. Born out of Carroll Shelby's vision to create the ultimate performance car, the Cobra combined a lightweight British AC roadster body with a massive American V8 engine. The result was nothing short of brutal. It looked small, sleek, and almost delicate, but driving one was like taming a wild beast with no safety net. The 427 model, introduced in 1965, was the most extreme version. Under its hood sat a 7.0-liter Ford Big Block V8, producing over 425 horsepower in factory form, and significantly more in competition trims. The car weighed less than 2,400 pounds, giving it one of the highest power-to-weight ratios of its era. From 0 to 60 miles per hour, the Cobra could sprint in under 4 seconds, making it faster than just about anything else on the road in the mid-1960s. But what made the Cobra so exhilarating also made it deadly. Its short wheelbase and lightweight chassis struggled to contain all that power. At high speeds, the car was extremely twitchy, with a tendency to break traction without warning. Oversteer was a constant threat, and inexperienced drivers who pushed too hard often found themselves spinning out of control. With primitive 1960s suspension, narrow tires, and no modern safety aids, the Cobra was a handful even for skilled racers. Another factor that added to its deadly reputation was its lack of protection. The Cobra was a bare-bones machine. Thin doors, no roll bars in many models, and no real safety features to speak of. If you lost control at high speed, the consequences were often catastrophic. Even racing drivers admitted that the Cobra 427 was one of the most intimidating cars to handle, requiring absolute focus and precision at all times. The Cobra's reputation as a widowmaker became well known in car culture. While enthusiasts adored its raw power and iconic looks, insurance companies dreaded it, and many owners discovered that mastering the car was far more difficult than simply planting the accelerator. Today, the Shelby Cobra 427 remains one of the most valuable and collectible American classics. Its danger is part of its legend, an untamed machine from an era when horsepower was everything and safety was an afterthought. For all its fame, the Cobra's bite was as deadly as its bark, earning it a permanent place among the most feared cars in history. Number 6. Ford GT40. The Ford GT40 is a legend in motorsport history, best known for defeating Ferrari at the 24 Hours of Le Mans and establishing Ford as a force in endurance racing. Built in the 1960s as part of Henry Ford II's quest to dominate international racing, the GT40 was a brutal machine that embodied both glory and danger. While it became a racing icon, it also earned a reputation as one of the deadliest performance cars of its era, a true widowmaker for those who underestimated it. The GT40's design was all about speed, with a mid-mounted V8 engine producing anywhere from 350 to over 500 horsepower depending on the variant, and a lightweight aerodynamic body. The car could reach speeds above 200 miles per hour, a staggering number for the 1960s. On the track, this made it nearly unstoppable, but it also made it extremely difficult to handle. The GT40's chassis was stiff, the suspension uncompromising, and the cockpit incredibly cramped. Drivers often described it as a punishing car that demanded constant attention. Its aerodynamics also posed risks. At high speeds, the GT40 had a tendency to feel light at the front, making it unstable in certain conditions. Without modern downforce technologies like diffusers and active aero, the car could easily become unsettled, especially over bumps or uneven surfaces. This instability, combined with the immense power, created a machine that was both thrilling and terrifying to drive. Heat was another serious danger. The GT40's cabin was notoriously hot due to its poor ventilation and proximity to the engine and exhaust. Drivers often reported cockpit temperatures exceeding 120 degrees Fahrenheit during long races, which not only made it physically exhausting, but also increased the risk of heat stroke and mistakes behind the wheel. Fatal crashes involving the GT40 were not uncommon in the racing world. The high speeds, combined with minimal driver protection by modern standards, made every accident potentially lethal. Even outside the racetrack, private owners who got their hands on GT40s often discovered that the car was not suited for regular roads. It was a race car in disguise, and any lapse in concentration could prove deadly. Today, the Ford GT40 is revered as one of the greatest race cars ever built. But along with its victories came a shadowy legacy of danger. It remains a symbol of 1960s racing glory and excess, but also a machine that tested the limits of human skill and punished anyone who failed to respect it. Number 5. Dodge Viper. Few cars represent raw, untamed American power better than the Dodge Viper. First introduced in 1992, the Viper was Chrysler's statement to the world. A no-compromise sports car built for speed, intimidation, and sheer excitement. With its enormous V10 engine, aggressive looks, and complete disregard for driver aids, the Viper became one of the most thrilling machines of the modern era. But it also earned a reputation as a widowmaker, a car so unforgiving that even experienced drivers often found themselves in serious trouble. At the heart of the Viper was an 8.0-liter V10 engine, originally developed with help from Lamborghini. Early models produced around 400 horsepower and 465 pound-feet of torque, figures that were monstrous for the early 1990s. Later versions pushed those numbers even higher, with some exceeding 600 horsepower. The Viper was brutally fast, capable of sub-4-second 0 to 60 times and top speeds well over 180 miles per hour. But raw numbers only tell part of the story. What made the Viper so dangerous was its lack of refinement. Unlike European sports cars of the time, which offered stability control, traction systems, or advanced suspension technology, the Viper had none of it. No traction control, no anti-lock brakes in the earliest versions, no stability assist. It was a pure, old-school performance car that demanded perfection from the driver at every moment. A single mistake with throttle input, especially in wet conditions, could send the massive rear tires spinning and the car sliding out of control. Its design also contributed to its reputation. With its wide stance, heavy steering, and brutal acceleration, the Viper was intimidating even at moderate speeds. The side exit exhaust pipes added another hazard. They were notorious for burning drivers and passengers who accidentally brushed against them while getting in or out of the car. The Viper quickly developed a reputation for being too much car for the average enthusiast. Many accidents involved inexperienced owners who bought the car for its image but couldn't handle its raw nature. Even professional drivers admitted that the Viper was one of the most demanding modern sports cars to control. Despite its dangers, the Dodge Viper became a cult hero. It represented everything enthusiasts loved about raw performance. No filters, no excuses, just brute force on four wheels. But that purity came at a price, and countless drivers discovered that the Viper was not forgiving. It was a beast that punished arrogance and rewarded only respect, which is why it stands tall among the world's most infamous widowmakers. Number 4. Porsche 911 Turbo 930. When Porsche introduced the 911 Turbo in the mid-1970s, known internally as the 930, it was unlike anything the automotive world had seen before. With its flared fenders, massive rear spoiler, and reputation for explosive power, it instantly became one of the most iconic sports cars of its era. But beneath the glamour, the 930 Turbo carried a dangerous reputation that earned it the infamous nickname, the Widowmaker. The danger stemmed largely from the way its turbocharger delivered power. Early turbo technology was far from refined, and the 930 was notorious for turbo lag. Drivers would press the throttle and feel little response, until suddenly the turbo spooled up and unleashed a violent surge of power all at once. This sudden jolt often came mid-corner, unsettling the car and sending it into uncontrollable oversteer. For drivers who weren't prepared, it was a recipe for disaster. The 930 also inherited the quirks of the 911 platform. Its engine was mounted behind the rear axle, which gave it tremendous traction under acceleration, but also made it prone to snap oversteer. Once the rear end broke loose, it was extremely difficult to recover. Even skilled drivers often found themselves spinning out with little warning. In wet or slippery conditions, the problem was magnified. Adding to the danger was the fact that the 930 Turbo was one of the fastest cars of its time. Early versions produced around 260 horsepower, but by the 1980s, output had climbed to over 330 horsepower. In a lightweight body, this gave the car staggering performance figures. The combination of high speed, unpredictable handling, and turbo lag meant many owners quickly found themselves in over their heads. The media and car magazines of the era frequently warned readers about the 930's unforgiving nature. Insurance companies even began charging higher premiums or refusing coverage altogether for turbo owners due to its accident record. Its reputation as a car that could bite back at any moment became part of its legend. And yet, the danger only added to its allure. Enthusiasts respected the 930 for its rawness, its ability to thrill, and the skill it demanded from its driver. Today, it is remembered both as a classic and as one of the most intimidating Porsches ever built. For those who mastered it, the 930 was a rewarding beast. For those who underestimated it, it was a true widowmaker. Number 3. Porsche Carrera GT. Few modern supercars have a reputation as fearsome as the Porsche Carrera GT. Launched in 2004, it was Porsche's ultimate statement of performance. An exotic V10-powered machine built with Formula One technology. It was beautiful, exclusive, and brutally fast. But it was also notoriously difficult to control, earning a reputation as one of the deadliest supercars ever built. Its tragic role in the accident that killed actor Paul Walker only cemented its legacy as a modern widowmaker. At the heart of the Carrera GT was a 5.7-liter naturally aspirated V10 engine producing 603 horsepower and capable of revving to 8,000 RPM. This engine was originally designed for a Le Mans racing program, which explains its razor-sharp, track-oriented character. In a lightweight carbon fiber chassis, weighing just 3,000 pounds, the car could rocket from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 3.5 seconds and hit a top speed over 200 miles per hour. It was, without question, a technological marvel. But the Carrera GT was also unforgiving. Porsche built it as a purist's car, and that meant no electronic safety nets, no traction control, no stability control, and no ABS-based intervention systems to save a driver from mistakes. The only assistance came from the driver's own skill. With its powerful engine, rear-wheel drive setup, and razor-thin margins for error, even small misjudgments could result in catastrophic accidents. Adding to the difficulty was its ceramic clutch, which was notoriously tricky to operate smoothly. Owners often complained about its grabby nature, especially in low-speed driving. At higher speeds, the car's twitchy handling demanded absolute precision. On racetracks, skilled drivers praised it as one of the most thrilling cars ever made. On public roads, however, it was often too much to handle safely. The Carrera GT's reputation turned infamous on November 30, 2013, when Paul Walker and his friend Roger Rodas died in a horrific crash while riding in one. The accident highlighted what many experts had already warned. The Carrera GT was not a forgiving car, even in the hands of experienced drivers. Today, the Porsche Carrera GT is a collector's dream, with values skyrocketing into the millions. But it remains a car that demands respect above all else. It is the kind of machine that offers unmatched exhilaration for those with the skill to control it, and devastating consequences for those who don't. That is why it stands tall as one of the ultimate widowmakers of the modern era. Number 2. Group B Rally Cars. In the world of motorsport, few categories are remembered with as much awe and fear as Group B rally racing. Introduced in 1982, Group B was meant to showcase the most advanced, most extreme rally cars ever built. Manufacturers were given unprecedented freedom, minimal weight restrictions, almost no limits on technology, and massive allowances for power. The result was a fleet of monsters that redefined what rally cars could do, but also made the sport lethally dangerous. These machines quickly earned a reputation as the ultimate widowmakers. The cars themselves were outrageous. Audi shocked the world with its Quattro S1, bringing all-wheel drive technology to rallying and changing the sport forever. Lancia unleashed the Delta S4, which featured both a supercharger and turbocharger, producing nearly 500 horsepower from a tiny 1.8-liter engine. Peugeot's 205 T16 and Ford's RS 200 joined the fray, each boasting power-to-weight ratios that rivaled Formula One cars of the era. Some reports suggest that in qualifying trims, Group B cars pushed over 600 horsepower, all in vehicles weighing barely 2,000 pounds. The danger came not only from the cars themselves, but also from the conditions. Rally stages were often run on narrow dirt roads, through forests, mountain passes, or snow-covered tracks, with little to no safety barriers. And unlike modern racing, fans stood shockingly close to the action, sometimes just feet away from the cars as they roared past at over 120 miles per hour. A single mistake could mean disaster for drivers, co-drivers, and spectators alike. Tragically, disaster struck often. In 1986, Henri Toivonen and his co-driver Sergio Cresto were killed in a fiery crash while driving a Lancia Delta S4 in Corsica. Their accident, along with several fatal incidents involving spectators being struck by cars, forced the FIA to shut down Group B altogether. The cars were simply too fast, too powerful, and too dangerous for rallying to continue in its current form. Despite its short life, Group B left behind a legendary legacy. Fans still regard it as the most exciting era of rallying, with cars that seemed almost superhuman in their speed, and drivers who became icons for their bravery. But it is remembered just as much for its dark side: the crashes, the tragedies, and the recognition that some machines were simply too dangerous to exist. Group B rally cars weren't just fast, they were lethal, and they remain among the most notorious widowmakers in motorsport history. Number 1. Chevrolet Corvette C4 ZR1 and beyond. The Chevrolet Corvette has always been America's sports car, but in the late 1980s and early 1990s, it became something else entirely. A machine so powerful and difficult to master that it earned the title of a true widowmaker. Among these, the C4 Corvette ZR1 stood out as the most infamous. Nicknamed the King of the Hill, it was designed to take on Europe's best, but it quickly developed a reputation for being more dangerous than most drivers could handle. The ZR1 debuted in 1990 with a revolutionary Lotus-designed 5.7-liter LT 5V8 engine, producing 375 horsepower, later increased to 405. At a time when most cars struggled to reach 200 horsepower, this was staggering. The Corvette was capable of a top speed over 180 miles per hour, putting it in the same league as Ferrari and Porsche, but at a fraction of the cost. For many buyers, this affordability meant that people with little to no high-performance driving experience suddenly had access to near supercar speeds. The problem was, the C4 Corvette's chassis and suspension weren't up to the task of controlling that power. While it was advanced for its time, the car was notorious for twitchy handling at high speeds. Its rear end could snap loose suddenly, especially during aggressive cornering, or if the driver lifted off the throttle mid-turn. The lightweight fiberglass body and less-than-perfect weight distribution only added to the unpredictability. Another issue was braking. While Corvette engineers tried to keep up with the ZR1's performance, the brakes were prone to fade under repeated hard use, particularly during spirited driving. On highways and back roads, this often resulted in dangerous situations where the car simply wouldn't slow as expected. Stories of accidents quickly followed. Many drivers bought the ZR1 for its incredible straight-line speed, but underestimated just how demanding it was to handle. Insurance companies took note, with Corvette owners facing steep premiums due to the car's growing accident statistics. Despite its reputation, enthusiasts still celebrate the ZR1 as a milestone in Corvette history. It proved that Chevrolet could build a world-class supercar, even if it came with a dangerous edge. Today, it's a collectible classic, admired for its raw power and groundbreaking technology. But its legacy as a car that punished overconfidence and demanded absolute respect ensures its place at the top of the Widowmaker list. From elegant classics like the Mercedes 300 SL Gullwing to modern beasts like the Porsche Carrera GT, these so-called Widowmakers remind us of a time when speed often came before safety. They thrilled drivers with raw power, but they also demanded skill, respect, and sometimes sheer luck to survive. While today's cars come equipped with advanced technology to protect us, the legends on this list live on as cautionary tales. They prove that performance without control can be a deadly mix. Which one shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more.